The Lebanese Civil War was one of the most complex conflicts of the modern era. Lasting for 15 years, it claimed at least 150,000 lives and displaced over 1 million people. And even today, its effects are still being felt. But behind it lay an extraordinarily complicated web of religious tensions, political rivalries, and foreign interventions. So, what exactly caused the Lebanese Civil War, and just how was it eventually resolved? Hello and welcome. If you're new to the channel, my name is James Ker-Lindsay, and here I take an informed look at international relations, conflict, security, and statehood. When we think of civil wars, we often imagine two sides battling for control of a country. But while some civil wars may indeed involve a relatively straightforward struggle between two opposing forces, many aren't nearly so straightforward. Instead, they can involve a wide array of internal and external factions, all battling for power. One of the best examples in modern international relations is the Lebanese Civil War. Indeed, it's a testament to the extraordinary complexity of some conflicts. Lebanon lies at the eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea. Approximately 10,500 square kilometres or 4,000 square miles, its immediate neighbours are Syria to the north and east and Israel to its south. With a current population of around 5.7 million, at the start of the war in 1975, the number of inhabitants led around 2.7 million and was highly diverse, with almost 20 different recognised ethnic and religious communities. In addition to Maronite Christians and Sunni and Shia Muslims, these included Druze, Armenians, Alawites, Jews, Palestinians, and numerous smaller Christian sects, including Greek Orthodox, Copts, and Protestants. Lebanon has an exceptionally long and rich history that spans thousands of years. In ancient times, the Phoenicians, Greeks, Romans, and Arabs all contributed to the country's diverse cultural and religious heritage. Then, in the early 16th century, it was conquered by the Ottoman Empire, marking the beginning of 400 years of Turkish rule. This lasted until 1920, when Lebanon came under French rule following the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire after the First World War. However, 20 years later, this also came to an end. As France came under Nazi occupation during the Second World War, Lebanon declared independence. At the heart of the new state was the National Pact. This divided power between the dominant religious groups in the country. Based on the 1932 census, which showed a slight Christian majority, it stipulated that the president would always be a Maronite Christian, the prime minister a Sunni Muslim, and the speaker of the parliament a Shia Muslim. But while the pact provided a framework for cooperation, problems gradually emerged as the Muslim population increased and demanded a greater share of political power. Additionally, another crucial factor now emerged. In 1948, Lebanon sided with the Palestinians and other Arab nations to attack the new state of Israel. However, when they were defeated, tens of thousands of predominantly Muslim Palestinians fled into Lebanon, further destabilising the delicate religious balance in the country. The first sign of trouble came in 1958 when tensions erupted between pro-Western Christian factions and pan-Arab Muslim groups. Although the crisis was resolved through US intervention and a short-lived United Nations peacekeeping force, it was a crucial sign of the country's escalating differences. By the 1960s, Lebanon was facing real problems, as the power-sharing system devised 20 years earlier no longer reflected the country's population. The Muslim communities, particularly the Shiite population, felt increasingly marginalised in a system that cemented Christian political dominance. At the same time, significant economic disparities also fed broader social tensions. While the Christians were seen as wealthy, a substantial part of the Shiite Muslim population lived in poverty. Meanwhile, the Palestinians became a significant problem. Although Palestinian militants based in Lebanon had long staged attacks on northern Israel, this escalated dramatically in September 1970 when nearby Jordan expelled the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the leading Palestinian armed group. As the PLO now moved to Lebanon, this further destabilised the country. As a result, by the mid-1970s, the situation had become precarious. Aside from the growing demands for political, economic and social reform, the steady erosion of state authority and the shifting demographic balance all contributed to a profound mistrust amongst the communities. As religious factionism grew and tensions escalated between the Christians and Palestinians, various armed militia now emerged. Ultimately, the turning point came on the 13th of April 1975 when Palestinian militants attempted to assassinate Pierre Gemayel, the leader of the Kateb or Phalangist Party, the main Christian militia. In response, Phalangist militants murdered 27 Palestinians travelling through a Christian neighbourhood in the country's capital, Beirut. From there, things rapidly escalated as the Lebanese national movement, the LNM, which comprised primarily of leftist and Muslim factions, allied with the PLO to oppose the Christian-dominated Lebanese Front, led by the Phalangists. As the communities put up barricades to seal themselves off, Beirut was quickly divided into Christian and Muslim sectors along the heavily fortified Green Line. In the months that followed, things rapidly deteriorated. As the government's authority collapsed and the National Army split into Christian and Muslim factions, the militias expanded. In addition to the PLO, the Phalangists and the LNM, at least a dozen other Christian groups emerged, alongside Sunni, Shia and Druze armed groups. But as complex as things were, the situation was about to become even more complicated. As the civil war intensified, what started as an internal conflict soon drew in outside actors. In June 1976, Syria invaded, sending in tens of thousands of troops. But while Damascus insisted that its intervention was to restore order and prevent a Palestinian Muslim victory, which many feared would prompt an Israeli invasion, the Palestinian attacks on Israel continued over the following decade. As a result, on the 6th of June 1982, Israel finally invaded. Pushing northwards to the outskirts of Beirut, this prompted one of the worst atrocities of the war when Christian Phalangists, supported by Israeli forces, attacked 2 Palestinian refugee camps, slaughtering up to 3,000 people, including women and children. But while the Israeli invasion eventually forced the PLO to withdraw from Lebanon, it also marked the start of the involvement of another new actor. Seeing an opportunity to take on its archenemy and extend its influence over the country's Shia community, Iran sent thousands of troops to Lebanon to arm and train a new Shiite militia, Hezbollah. Meanwhile, broader international efforts to stop the fighting had little effect. This was graphically highlighted in October 1983 when Shia militants bombed the French and US military contingents serving with the so-called multinational force, leading to over 300 deaths and eventually forcing the mission to withdraw from the country the following year. I hope you're finding this useful. If so, please consider giving it a like and perhaps subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. It all really helps. Thanks so much, and now back to the video. By the end of the 1980s, Lebanon had become a quagmire of competing forces. Indeed, throughout the war, it's estimated that over 100 different factions emerged. To make matters even more complicated, many of these would shift their positions according to developments on the ground, often forming alliances with other militias that had seemingly opposing religious, political, or ideological leanings. However, amidst the chaos, things were beginning to change. After nearly a decade and a half of fighting, it was increasingly clear that none of the factions could secure an outright victory. More importantly, the Christians, once the dominant force, were steadily losing influence as Muslim militias controlled large swathes of the country. Likewise, the international context was shifting. Against the backdrop of the end of the Cold War, international pressure for a deal began to grow. In October 1989, the parties signed the National Reconciliation Accord, commonly referred to as the Taif Agreement. Brokered by Saudi Arabia and supported by the United States and Syria, this established the foundations for national reconciliation by redistributing political authority. In addition to diminishing the power of the Christian president, it ensured equal representation for both Christians and Muslims in parliament, alongside the gradual dismantling of political sectarianism. More broadly, while it affirmed Lebanese independence, it also permitted Syrian forces to remain in the country for a transitional period. While the agreement ended the civil war, like many other peace deals, it encountered significant challenges in the years that followed. For instance, in March 1991, an amnesty law was passed, pardoning all political crimes committed during the war. Although supporters claimed that it was essential for peace and reconciliation, it meant that those who committed atrocities would never be held accountable. Then there were also broader issues regarding implementation. Although the accord called for the militias to disarm and most complied, Hezbollah refused, arguing that it was still fighting the Israeli occupation of the south. However, even after Israeli troops eventually withdrew in 2000, Hezbollah continued to oppose Israel, leading to another brief Israeli intervention in 2006 and another in 2024. As for the Syrian troops, they remained in Lebanon until 2005, when they were forced out by a popular anti-Syrian uprising that erupted after the assassination of the former Lebanese Prime Minister Rafik Hariri, which many felt was carried out by Damascus. Although it should be pointed out that a later UN tribunal concluded that there was no direct evidence to support this claim. All told, the human cost of the 15-year civil war was enormous. Estimates suggest that 150,000 people were killed, 300,000 injured, and over 1 million people displaced. All this in a country with a population of fewer than 5 million. In addition, the physical destruction was immense. By the end of the conflict, large parts of Beirut were little more than rubble, especially along the Green Line. But while all this eventually led to a massive reconstruction effort, the war's lasting impact on Lebanon's political landscape has been profound. While ending the immediate conflict, the Taif Agreement has been criticised for perpetuating the religious divisions it was intended to address. Even now, deep distrust remains between the various communities, hindering efforts to build effective state institutions. Likewise, efforts to implement reforms have repeatedly stalled as rival political leaders prioritise their own interests over national stability, and external forces, including Israel, Iran and Syria, have continued to influence developments within the country. And it's for all these reasons that the Lebanese Civil War remains one of the most prolonged, devastating and complex conflicts of modern times. Of course, Lebanon was just one of many conflicts that have shaped modern international relations. Here are some videos on other wars that have also had a profound impact.